Hello all. Today we're going to go into a whole primer on different blade shapes for knives. So when you look at different bladed weapons and you see all these exotic shapes, there's a natural tendency to wonder, what is the shape of this blade for? Okay? And you do get some information about that in a lot of what people present. However, there's a lot more to it. And what is involved in that respect is very important, because once you understand why blades have different shapes, once you understand what the intended purpose of the blade is, it really rounds out your understanding of bladed weapons. There are many reasons why weapons are designed the way they are. We have a certain bias. Goes by many names. Some people think it's some sort of a supremacy kind of a slant. Some people think it's a understanding of chauvinism about what we know and how we think certain principles are the key to understanding and others don't apply. And I'll give you an example of this, okay? If you read Plato, he wrote about history, and one of the historical things that he wrote about was meeting with Egyptian priests who told him that the Egyptian priests had gotten knowledge from the lost continent of Atlantis. Now, I'm not saying whether Atlantis exists or not. It's not my point. However, generally, when that's looked upon by historians, we're told that, well, he was embellishing the truth, or any other reason why, because that doesn't fit their understanding of how history is conducted. And it's a bias, okay? So we have a similar bias when we start to look at just all these different weapons, We sort of just look at them and gawk at them and, that's kind of cool. Can I pick my nose with this? Well, here's the truth. When these weapons were developed, people were using them, and they were developed for very particular reasons. So, there's a very good reason why, when we talk about these shapes, they're relevant to the use of the weapon, okay? And I want to proceed from the general to the specific, okay? So I'm going to show you something real quick. Here's a blade, none in particular, it's a boot knife. It's got a little bit of a curve to it, okay? See this blade? This blade has no real personality, okay? It's basically a hunk of metal with a sharpened edge and a point, but it has no particular design qualities that make it particular, okay? And this is always the default position, okay? Honey, can you get me the 2 silver practice weapons near the swords? I'll show you an example of how that principle applies here. But they're just the short knives. But nothing particular about this blade, okay? Now, yeah, thank you. Okay, now, when you start practicing against weapons, okay, you usually start with something that's unadorned. Don't bang into the thing, okay? Because you want to start from the most sort of basic concept of a blade. So as you can see, this particular practice knife is straight, okay? As you get more involved, you become where you have different sort of blades, okay? This blade has some modifications on it, okay? It controls the way it's held, the point at which the blade is part of the weapon, etc., okay? Now, If you understand that concept as a general understanding, then we'll use that to transition to our first knife, okay? This is a Spanish knife, okay? Now, you look at this knife, you look at the blade, okay? You look at the handle, and it looks nice. It looks artistic. This knife, and it's not an expensive knife, but it is following a pattern that's used on a tremendous amount of knives that are manufactured in Spain. And when you first look at this knife, okay, you can see that it has some very distinct curves and attributes, okay? Now, before we talk about what those curves and attributes are for, jeez, I thought I brought it. Let's compare it to just, if you can imagine a blade that's just straight, okay? That's just, you stab with like this, okay? I want you to just take a look at what would be different, okay? Between a blade of this type that's just straight, okay? And some of the curves on this blade. Why are they there? Is it just to be pretty? Is it because Spanish people are very sensual and, you know, they dance and they make their knives pretty? Absolutely not, okay? First of all, if you look at this design of the handle, you see this angle? When you hold this weapon, you now have this, which buttresses that weapon. So when you're doing some sort of a stabbing movement, okay? And look at the angle of the blade. It conforms to that, so that this knife, okay, it's not a locking blade, okay? You can see that at this angle, you have this to help keep the knife in your hand when it's got blood on it, okay, other fluids. You've got an angle here so that this blade is going to penetrate at a particular angle, which means that at the angle of penetration for this isn't going to lock back on your hand, okay? It's coming in here. The force is going all through the spine of the blade, okay, up to here, okay? Very particular, okay? When you stab with this blade, okay, it has a certain curvature. It's not straight, okay? And a lot of that also has to do with when you come up here, you see that little groove? See if you can see that here. Just, okay? That designates a very particular point. Okay, so you're coming at a certain angle with your stab, okay? That's your blade area, okay? There's a slight contour to this blade, and you gotta look real carefully to see it. Well, not so carefully, see how it curves, okay? And again, you have this angle where if you hold this knife properly, you're always entering with your stabbing movement in such a way that the force of the stab, okay, will go to the right place of the knife so that it's really not going to lock up on you, okay? If I hold it like this, on the other hand, the wrong way, and I stab in and I catch this the wrong way, this could very easily fold in on my hand, okay? So this is a very cheap knife, but if you notice, all those design elements are in place, okay? There's a very specific reason why this is curved in this fashion. This is a Spanish knife. Okay, we're going to go on to our next segment here, okay?